Howdy, Tech Drover. After decades in tech, I've learned one thing. The industry has lost its way, and we pay for it every day. All of us. Not just developers, not just tech companies, all of us. We deal with frequent app updates. We deal with bad apps. We deal with apps that miss the mark. It's time to get these things going better. And I hope in these videos I've got you thinking, how can you make your apps better? How can you make them more valuable to your customers? Because tech, it ain't going to get better without all of us actively trying to make it better. Every day, every app, every update, everything. Trying to make it better. Over my career, I built avionics. I've led teams. I've created embedded systems, motor controls when the off-the-shelf stuff didn't cut it. Things that actually worked in the real world. Manufacturing diagnostics. Seen lots of fads come and go, but what mattered most was simple. Solving real-world problems, building for safety and reliability, for keeping businesses alive. Without the businesses, you don't got a paycheck. Doesn't matter how good you think your app is. Another thing, tech, engineering, development, whatever you want to call it, used to be fun. But the fun got lost along the way, got buried by processes and rules and guidelines. A lot from people who, I don't know if they ever built an app in their life. You didn't have to be some overeducated researcher, just a skilled creative engineer with a passion to solve a real world problem. And there are lots of real world problems that we can solve with tech. In some cases, in some of the startups I was in, it was innovate or die. The business had to stay around. You had to keep going to keep it up. You weren't just following a script written by those questionable experts. You were focused on the end user, how they would use the product and get value out of it, how it would solve a problem for them. I was working on a robotic pill dispenser to be used in hospitals to get patients their meds much faster. Unfortunately, the startup kind of messed it up on the business side. Tech worked great. We cared about doing our part for profitability and keeping the business going to make sure we still had a paycheck. There were companies that used to treat business as a game. They had meetings and they would share the data with their employees. Here's what's going on. Here's where we're making money. Here's where we got to do better. They were treating it like stats in a game. It was also about ingenuity and responsibility. Now, too often, it's about frameworks, vanity metrics, resume-driven development. I'm doing this to put it on my resume so I can get a better job. Yeah, don't be selfish. And management celebrates numbers that really don't matter when it comes down to it. Our focus got totally wrong. Story points mattered more than the value we were giving to the end user. Our teams were overstaffed and keeping them busy with meaningless updates and features that no one wanted, no one really cares about. The focus became following the script rather than the technology and what it actually does, how it actually does it. Especially when you're working in a field like I was when I got out of college, aircraft avionics, we had to solve difficult problems. We had to be creative. We also had to be careful because we had to ensure the safety of the aircraft, the pilot, anyone around it. But we're also doing what I called tinker toy electronics. In a lot of ways, we weren't really engineers. We were taking off-the-shelf components and wiring them up to do something. The real engineers were the ones back at the IC company designing the integrated circuits. We did a lot of good work, but still kind of tinker toy electronics. We also use that as an excuse for when things didn't have important features, because doing the real work was just too hard. And it's become the same in software development. Instead of writing code for something relatively simple, we find an off-the-shelf solution, open source. We don't care about the license, the bugs it might have, the limitations, or if it's even going to be supported over time. We just grab it and go. I know one developer who complained about every tool we had. The UI was horrible, terrible. He complained about every one, but when it's his time to build a UI, he built the worst thing I have ever seen, and that is saying something. Safety is important. Tech has done a lot of good things for safety, seat belts, airbags for cars, a lot of things around electrical and electricity. Safety good there. That table saw that stops cutting when it hits hands, and how they test it? They test it with hot dogs, run them into it. So safety becomes important, but every experienced engineer who's worked on a complex system knows every time you add anything, it reduces the reliability. So one more component to fail, hardware or software. So you got to add the ones that make sense. Features are added for safety, but sometimes they're more distracting. Is that what you really wanted to do? For example, my wife has a great car. It's parked in the garage. I get in it, start it, put it into reverse. It starts beeping at me because the garage is in front of me. I'm going backwards. Why is it annoying me, telling me there's something in front of me? Because I ain't going that way. Who thought that was a good idea? Who thought that would add to safety? Another part, I was driving down the freeway in it. It started beeping at me. I almost swerved and had a wreck because it's beeping at me. So I had to distract myself, look down, and it was telling me I was driving straight for too long. I'm sorry, that's just the road I was on. You want me to swerve around a little bit to fool the safety device? Oh, I'm sorry, the safety device. So let's make these really safe. We also put these big displays in our cars. All this touch stuff, man, that looks great. People really love it. But if you're trying to do something, you got to pull over and click through the menus. Forget about cell phone distractions. How distracting is that? You're going to pull over every time you want to change something, switch from radio or bring up the map. I mean, think about this. I think another culprit in this, what's taking tech off the rails, movies and TVs. They make coding, building tech look like magic. They've got some problem and somebody types on the keyboard for a few minutes and changes the software and makes it do something totally different. Yeah, that's not the real world. That's just more fantasy from those guys on the West Coast. But some people who aren't that experienced in tech, they believe it. Business managers, business executives. I've heard them. They see this stuff. They read an article overnight and they think that's the way it should be. That's the way it should be done. They don't talk to their tech guys. They don't trust their tech guys, or they trust the wrong one. Who does ask pompous questions and likes to make himself look big and smart instead of communicating simply and making something that works. I've said it before, we praise youth over experience. I don't know how many bad apps, no way to measure this, got messed up because someone didn't have the experience in it. And when it comes down to it, we deserve better. Not just tech, we the end users, all of us. We deserve better. We deserve better people to build better apps that aren't going to distract us, that aren't going to fall short of what they could have been, that provide real value consistently, time and time again, that have planned updates that add real value, not just fluff and BS. So some recommendations. Don't just follow the script. Build it for the real world, test it in the real world. Sometimes you got to take the harder path to get better value. Yeah, it may be more risky, but you get bigger rewards. Be an engineer, be a developer. Don't just be a cog. Anybody can be a cog. Be someone that adds value. We've traded craftsmanship for convenience. Maybe it's time to get back to that. So if you got ideas, horror stories, or just need help wrangling your tech, hit me up. Until next time, keep building smarter, not just faster.